Today I'd like to point out something that might be quite obvious, but I was reminded of it the other day, last week, and it was quite profound for me. And so when we hear about anicca, dukkha, and anatta, especially when we talk about anatta and the aspects of not-self, we always hear about anatta in reference to ourselves. How this form, this bodily makeup, these four elements, or if you're into chemistry, the periodic table, the physical structure of this body is not self. Feelings are also not self, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral, neither painful nor pleasant. Also any mental stress, or any mental pleasant feelings that we might feel, any happiness or joy. This is not self, this is not who we are, this is not under our control. Perceptions as well, how we perceive the world, how we conceive of things as conceptual, a monk, a car, a tree, a forest, our volitional formations, our plans and intentions that we carry out. These are constructed and formed by what we think we need for ourselves, by what our family tells us, by what society tells us. And lastly, there's consciousness. Consciousness of the six sense bases. These points of experience, the eye, the ear, the nose and tongue, the body and the mind. And so often when not self is talked about, it's in reference to the five aggregates. But to our internal five aggregates. And what I was reminded of last week is quite simply, people external to us are also not self. And so if someone's being harsh to us, or we don't quite like another person, to remind ourselves that this person too is not in control of what they're doing. That they too are just an accumulation of conditions, and their conditions and our conditions are clashing. And for me this can relieve quite a lot of tension, because in the same way that we are dragged around by our own craving, pulled around by our views about the world, people external to us, other people that we meet, are also subject to this. And it reminded me of a passage from Majjhima Nikaya 26, when the Buddha had set out to attain liberation. He said, I myself, who am subject to birth, old age, sickness and death, myself being subject to this, I sought what was also subject to birth, old age, sickness and death. And he called this the ignoble search. And he said, well, how about if I switch my perception? If I change what I'm looking for? And so myself being subject to birth, old age, sickness and death, why don't I look for something that is not subject to birth, not subject to disease or illness, something that is free from death. And it was after some time that he finally did come to see, come to realize and witness something that was deathless. And so if people ask, what's the ultimate goal of Buddhism? You could say immortality. But it's a different kind of immortality that we seek. Immortal in the sense that we're never born in the first place. That we don't come into the world and have to deal or endure the ebb and flow of existence. Because there is gratification to be found here. There are pleasant things to be enjoyed. But it also comes at a cost. There's a drawback. And so the Buddha never says you must strive for liberation, that you must attain Nibbana, that it's the only way. But for one who's exhausted and tired of this constant back and forth, there exist methods to go beyond this ordinary state of existence. And so that's was something I was reminded of last week. We should also be reminded that others are also subject to the same issues we are. And it can cultivate a sense of compassion. So this is the Dhamma I wanted to share with you today.